Hey guys, what's going on? It's Eli back with another review video and one more Christmassy review. That's right. And and before the new year hits, so anyways, you read the title of what I'm reviewing. I am of course reviewing, and I think, I saved the best for last. The Santa Clauses. Yep. The Disney Plus original, and with Tim Allen once again, back as Santa Claus himself, Scott Calvin. Just really awesome. First off, the Santa Claus films, I mean, who doesn't love them? Yeah, I mean, they're obviously, there are those that do enjoy the Santa Claus films, but there are those that are they're fine, and stuff like that. Especially when it comes to the sequels. Now, I've stated this before, that the Santa Claus 2 is my all-time favorite in the Santa Claus movie trilogy. It's really cool that, that this franchise is continuing, this time as a show. I remember back when this was announced, actually this was announced, the last, holidays, and, we had to wait another year for this to come out. But this was totally unexpected. I never thought, and I'm sure a lot of people never thought that, we would see a TV series of the Santa Claus. But it happened, and I will say, from what I heard, and when the first few episodes came out, it was kind of a rough start, I guess, but from what I can tell, the later episodes of season 1, it got better. Yeah, from what I can tell, and I think so too. But so season 1 has six episodes. Chapter 1, Good to Ho. Chapter 2, The Success's Clause. I think I got that right. Chapter 3, Into the Wobbly Woods. Chapter 4, The Shoes of the Bed Clause. And Chapter 5, Across the Yuleverse. And Chapter 6, A Christmas to Remember. Yeah, so I think all 6 episodes were pretty good. The whole show. And the description, I've got this one pulled up about the show itself. Scott Calvin is about to turn 65 and, realizing he can't be Santa forever, sets out to find a suitable replacement Santa while preparing his family for a new adventure in life south of the pole. Yeah. So I thought that the stories, for all 6 chapters, were not bad. And with our cast of characters, we of course got Tim Allen, of course, reprising the role of Scott Calvin / Santa Claus. I will say, the look for Scott Calvin as Santa, I mean, I'm not saying it's bad, but the thing is, I've got, I know for me and I can't be the only one. For me and a lot of people, we've gotten so used to how he looked in the movies. That beard was quite big, and that hairstyle, and he had these eyebrows in the show. We never saw those kind of eyebrows. He looked normal without the eyebrows, as Santa. He looked fine. But I guess, because of how old Scott Calvin is in the show, I can understand that. And of course, you got Elizabeth Mitchell back again as Carol Calvin, aka Mrs. Claus. It was great seeing her again. And we also get their kids, Cal, and he was their first child, Buddy Calvin Claus. Yep, because as he appeared at the end of the 3rd film, right before the 3rd film ends, him as a baby, and Buddy Claus. Yep, so Cal being played by Austin Kane. And then there's their daughter, Sandra, played by Tim Allen's real-life daughter, Elizabeth Allen Dick. Yep. So, and Dick being at the end of her name. So, yeah, and good for her, because, you know, getting to work with her dad, and, you know, the fact that her dad plays Santa. So, yeah. So Cal and Sandra, they were pretty good in the show. Not to mention, we find out later on the show they have some special powers, and especially from her, they get them from their dad. Ugh. Cal can see portals in the sky like his dad can whenever, you know, he's on the sled and, you know, controlling the reindeer. Yeah. And Sandra, she has the ability to talk to animals. So, yeah, even has a little, like, white furry animal, like, in the North Pole as a friend. What creature is that anyways? Like, a special, like, North Pole creature? I don't know. And then there are the elves. Some of the elf characters were pretty good in this. The top elf characters in the show are Noel, played by Devin Bright, and Betty, played by Matilda Lawler, if I'm saying her last name right. And it turns out that, yeah, both Noel and Betty, they are married. So, well, let's face it, because we know that the elves, they look like kids, but, you know, they are, like, say, 100 years old and so on, you know. And there were some and some of the other elf characters were pretty good too. So, yeah. And so basically, Scott, he feels as though that he needs to retire. Even say when he he starts trying to find a replacement, you know, to take his place as Santa. And of course, you know, he did start off asking his son, Charlie, once again played by Eric Lloyd. It was good to see Charlie once again. And at this point, Charlie, he's now married, and he's got a wife and kids. So yeah, that's very nice for Scott to be a grandfather now. That's really, you know, good for him. So, like, Scott asks Charlie, you know, like, for him to take his place, but unfortunately, Charlie really can't. And not to mention, Charlie hasn't even told his wife and his kids on who his granddad is, you know, his father. Just, then we also get these two other characters. Simon Chosky, if I'm saying the last name right, played by Cal Penn, and his daughter Grace, played by Rupali Red, if I'm saying that right. And Simon is this, you know, has a business, and like one main thing of his business is drones, and having the ability to, at one point, pitching an idea of, you know, drones quickly, instantly, you know, bringing your deliveries to you. And actually, it turns out, and according to my mom, they tried doing that. That was intended to happen. Like, they tried doing that, but it just didn't really work because of controlling the drones and all that kind of stuff. It's impossible, you know. And that's another thing too, because speaking of my mom, I got her to watch this finally, and you know, she enjoyed it. She enjoyed it too, and I'm happy to hear. I'm happy to hear that she enjoyed it. So of course, at one point about Simon, he did see, supposedly, I guess, he did see Santa in the sky, and that's when Simon gets the attention of Scott, and he brings in Simon to be the next Santa. And of course, at one point he kinda does, you know, because as we all know, and well, judging by the trailers, you know, like, somebody taking over as Santa was gonna be screwing this up, and Simon definitely does. There's also this witch, North Pole witch, named La Befana, played by Laura San Giacomo, if I'm saying her. I think that sounds about right. But if I'm still wrong, just, sorry. But like she has a connection, like, with Betty, and even say like Betty and some of the other elves, they start to realize that things are not looking good, and not to mention that Christmas might almost be destroyed, and there's this, orb or whatever it is, like, that is important to the story. Well, even once, like, at one point, yeah, Scott does retire from Christmas, and him and his family, they arrive at Chicago, I believe, and things are looking fine throughout that year. And not to mention, like, because Cal and Sandra, they wanted to live in the real world and experience a lot that they hadn't yet, because, well, they were born in the North Pole. I do remember, yeah, even Scott was considering having his other son, Cal, be the next Santa, because even at one point he wanted to at least stay at the North Pole. And let me tell you, because I had a good feeling this would not end well when he made the announcement to the elves that he would be retiring. Kind of like a long pause, and then they just cry and go in a panic mode. Just, yeah, that escalated quickly. So knowing the elves, even at one point, like, Cal, he starts meeting and falling for this one girl named Riley, and yeah, Riley, played by Ruby J. And Ruby J, yeah, she was pretty good in this, and especially the interactions with Riley and Cal, pretty funny too. And a lot of people that Carol, sees again, and they really don't know about, her, like, they were unaware of her husband, Scott, of course, and, Scott not getting used to the real world, because, he had been in the North Pole for so long. So, yeah, there are those moments. And even when, like, Scott did have a job for a little bit, and even say Noel, he did come to Scott, and he kind of helped out with Scott, like package delivering and so on. And with Simon, again, because that's when he, like, now that he's technically the new Santa, he then starts messing up Christmas. And even say, like, each of the elves are disappearing because they've lost faith in the spirit of Christmas, That's kind of shocking to see, and, like, they just completely vanish. And Betty, like, something has to be done, and Betty comes to La Befana, the North Pole Witch, to reach out to one elf to convince Scott to come back and to set things right. And who would that be to, confront Scott and so on? Well, none other than the fan favorite return of the fan favorite from the Santa Claus films, Bernard. Yeah, it was great seeing Bernard again. Especially since everybody was upset when Bernard was not present in the third film. But the show did a good job on establishing what happened to Bernard. That was really cool. And especially not to mention, because he left the North Pole, he did get married to an older woman, and, well, let's face it, because of how old Bernard is at this point, like, he's up there, but, he's still looking good. And he kind of did become human when he left, so. And basically, yeah, in the Yuleverse episode, that's where, Bernard takes, actually, let me pull that up a second. It's in Chapter 5, Across the Yuleverse. Scott is taken to the Yuleverse, where he learns the truth about how he came to be Santa. Meanwhile, things at the North Pole get worse as more elves disappear, as I said, and Christmas spirit is all but destroyed. So yeah, Scott being taken into the Yuleverse, although Bernard says there's no actual name for this, but, for Scott, he calls it the Yuleverse, and that's perfectly fine. It about makes sense, because we see a bunch of other Santa Clauses, and, we see the first Santa Claus, like, I believe, St. Nicholas, and, even Krampus, or is it Krampus or Krampus? However you pronounce it. He makes an appearance in this, too. That's pretty funny. And there's even a Black Santa, and we even get to see Scott's childhood, because he did believe in Santa, and the fact we do get an appearance, one of the Santa Clauses that appears in this episode is the Santa that fell off Scott's roof, and when Scott said, "Hey, you!" It's that Santa, although not the same actor, but still, And it was never really an accident. Like, okay, when Scott said, "Hey, you," that didn't cause Santa to fall off the roof, especially in that in chapter 5, and with Bernard, just Bernard still the same Bernard, just with his temper, and just like, I was against it from the start, like him against, Scott being the new Santa, and as I even said, and again, because even like how he was in the Santa Claus 2 with him and Curtis, like, just hilarious, yeah, so some of the Santas, yeah, as I said, like St. Nicholas, and there was Santa number 17, yeah, and apparently Scott was never meant to retire as Santa that quickly, because, well, Scott thought he was supposed to retire, because, like, he thought that something was going wrong, like he was losing weight or something, or I don't know, something like that, I don't know, but no, like, there was nothing wrong with him. He just, like, it's just not the time for him to retire as Santa, And it's even funny, because the Star Wars Holiday Special was mentioned in this episode. That was pretty funny. And so, of course, yeah, Scott does go back to the North Pole along with Noel. Like, his kids and his wife, he doesn't want them to tag along. He just wants this to be him and Noel. But because of Simon, like, he starts using drones and a lot of things, and even, like, locking up Scott and Noel. And that's when, of course, in the final episode, episode 6, well, even at one point, Cal does reveal the truth to Riley that his dad is Santa, but of course, she doesn't believe him, but does tell her that, if you stay up, my dad will come down the chimney, and he knows one Christmas present that her brother had been asking for, and that being a Loki pop vinyl. I thought that was pretty funny, And then at one point, like, Carol and, Sandra and Cal, like, they get, like, a horse and a horse carriage, and getting the horse to fly. And not to mention that earlier in the show, Sandra managed to calm down a runaway horse, and, of course, was talking to the horse. So there's that. And, of course, the horse does fly. And even say, with all the elves disappearing, and, not to mention when Betty, Noel's wife, Betty disappeared. And even when Noel left the North Pole, he did leave a note for his wife. But at one point, Simon, he saw the note, and he just destroyed it. Like, dude, did you really have to do that? You went too far right there. And that, of course, it's obvious, because Betty would think that Noel didn't leave without, like, letting her know and telling her, but he did. But as I just said, God. And of course, with Carol and Cal and Sandra, they come in to help Scott and Noel as well because they were locked up at one point, and not to mention we get an appearance, a returning appearance of the toy soldiers from the second film, and we find out. The show establishes what happened to the remaining toy soldiers. They were basically locked up. So that pretty much explains a lot. From Bernard, his absence in the third film, and with the toy soldiers. Two things that have been established. Well done, show. Well done. And a pretty cool moment for Carol, because her fighting the toy soldiers was pretty funny. Not to mention that was almost intended to be in the second film, but that was cut. In this, she's really kicking butt, like just kicking the toy soldiers. Yeah. And of course, there's even like one other thing. The coat, Santa's coat, it is alive, and it's on it's pretty funny because it's a coat. It can't, like, walk, it's crawling. And it's crawling to, well, obviously, Scott. And there's, like, a face-off against Scott and Simon. And even, like, I was kind of wondering this, too, and I knew something like this would happen, because Simon's daughter, Grace, was just totally unaware of this, and, even questioning her dad if he's the bad guy. And technically, he wasn't really being a bad guy. He was just messing things up, and I don't think he didn't realize it until he did, so, and also, yeah, because everything does end well, Christmas is saved, and the elves return. Betty and Noel, they're reunited, and there was forgot to mention one elf who, Gary, played by Liam Kyle, who had an eye patch. An elf with an eye patch, that's interesting. And he was like this kind of like, just, I don't know, I wouldn't say jerk, but just like, just some elf, and I, kind of like, would like, get on your nerves or something like that, I don't know, like, yeah, or just, I don't know. And and also, yeah, and that, like, as, again, Scott is Santa once again, and rightfully so, and Simon and Grace, and another important thing about Simon and Grace, well, unfortunately, Simon's wife and, Grace's mom, that is, like, she unfortunately died, last year, like, by last Christmas, and, like, I think this was a couple years ago, and, especially because, I think this was Cal's idea, that for this Christmas, everybody would get, like, snow globes, which contain memories of, of their Christmas, which that's very touching right there. And of course, one sequence where, it's not Scott Calvin that comes down the chimney, it's Cal. Cal comes down the chimney where he sees Riley, and Riley now like believes and like sees the truth, and, Cal does have the Loki pop vinyl that her brother wanted, but also has these, like, red flowers. I forget, they're not roses, but they are, I forget what they're called, but, and I knew this was coming too. Of course, she does kiss Cal, and there's even at one point when, as they're kissing, like, they're floating. And so good for her, like, knowing that, what Cal said to her is the truth, and even, like, Scott asking his son if he made sure to wipe her memory of, like, she doesn't remember that, he's Santa, but I think he forgot to do that. But, no, I don't think that was necessary. That's not necessary for her memory to be wiped, because the relationship between both Riley and Cal just got started. So, and a nice ending where, after Christmas is finished, and, that's another thing, too, because obviously, yeah, because Scott has an important job as Santa, he didn't have that much time at the beginning of the show to be with his family for Christmas. But this time, they join in with him, bringing Christmas around the world, all that. And yeah, a little montage of everybody getting their Christmas gifts of the snow globes, of memories of, their past Christmases. Very sweet, yeah. And I was and you know what? At first, this was going to be a mini-series, just a one-time thing, one season, but literally, when the final episode came out, it was announced that it was being renewed, and I look forward to that. I look forward to Season 2. There's so much that they can do for a Season 2. Not to mention, they weren't able to bring in everybody from the movies. They weren't able to bring everybody into the show. But they can. They can by Season 2. We'll just have to wait and see what happens in Season 2. But for the first season, I thought it was pretty good. I definitely thought it was pretty good. And definitely, what the heck? I'm giving this a 10 out of 10. I really enjoyed this. And what about you guys? What did you think of the Santa Clauses so far? And what did you think of my review? Leave comments and give this review a like as always. So, with all that being said, yep, this is the last Christmassy review and the last review, for this year. It's been a lot of fun, and I think I picked some pretty good, Christmassy films and, shows with this. I think I picked out some pretty good ones, and you guys, you've enjoyed what I've reviewed for this year's Christmas. What you get my point. But anyways, it's been a lot of fun, as I said, and, look forward to next Christmas of what I'll be reviewing. So again, I hope you've enjoyed what I reviewed for this Christmas, and until next Christmas, thank you so much for watching. Again, 10 out of 10 for the Santa Clauses. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of the Santa Clauses. More reviews coming your way. They're gonna be awesome. Keep looking forward, and I'll see you guys in the next video/review. Take care, peace out, and for one last time, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you guys, and have a Happy New Year.